What's interesting to me is how the continuity happened when L. Ron Hubbard passed away. Because you had this guy, we've talked about him today, David Miscavige. I got it right now. He essentially took over in 1986, I guess like 3 days after Hubbard died. He announced it inside Scientology that he's dead, and now I'm in charge. And he's held an iron fist since then for almost 40 years. How did that happen? How did he become the guy, and how did he even get involved in Scientology in the first place?
Well, as a kid, he joined. His father was a Scientologist, probably his mom too. I don't remember offhand, but Miscavige got in early, and he had some problems that felt that Scientology cured. And he became a Commodore's messenger. When Hubbard was at sea, he would have usually cute little 14-year-old girls.
Oh, boy.
As his messengers. And there was no hanky-panky as far as...
We sure about that?
Well, we haven't heard of anything really. He just liked having them waiting on him night and day.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And they would be Hubbard's voice on the ship. He would be mad at somebody, and he'd call in a messenger and say, "You find Joe, and you tell that son of a..." and just curse up a storm. And she would have to go and find that person, and in the same tone as Hubbard, say, "You son of a..." And so all these people on board the ship would be terrified of these 14-year-old girls coming toward them, because they knew if this girl was saying this, Hubbard means business.
Oh, my God. It's like the Wizard of Oz.
So he became a messenger and found himself at a young age being one of the few people who knew Hubbard's desert hiding spot after his wife went to prison. Mm-hmm. There are only a couple of people that were allowed to go up to his secret location. And Miscavige was one of those. And the people who were living with Hubbard out there at that compound were supposed to take over. Pat and Annie Broker, I believe. Hubbard kind of had in mind that they would take over, but Miscavige, ruthless person that he is, decided, no, I'm going to have a power coup, and I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to get rid of everybody that I possibly can, since he spoke to the old man, Hubbard. People knew that he spoke to the old man. He just bullshit his way through this whole thing and got rid of anyone who was competition and took charge at a very young age. And there's a reason David Miscavige's father wrote a book about him and called it Ruthless. I mean, this guy is a piece of work.
Oh, yeah.
But it's amazing. Usually when a cult leader dies, the cult disperses. This one is held together.
What is it about his personality, you think, that makes him so magnetic to the followers? Minus, obviously, the ruthless.
Miscavige?
Yeah.
I don't know that he's magnetic. I think that it's probably just the fact that they really still believe in Hubbard and the tech. David Miscavige is supposedly protecting and safeguarding L. Ron Hubbard's tech.
He's Tim Cook to Steve Jobs.
Yeah, and anyone who's been critical of Miscavige, he's gotten rid of and put in the hole, like Mike Render spent 2 years locked in a double-wide trailer with bars on the windows.
What?
And all these executives, all these executives that would fall in disfavor with Miscavige, they'd be put in a hole.
But that's false imprisonment.
Well, yes, but you're imprisoned in your mind. And at one point, the FBI was going to go in there and raid the place. This was after Mike was out. And they had filled them in on all the things that are going on at the desert compound. But then, they were told, listen, if you go in and knock down the doors and barge in there and say, we're here to rescue you, the people who had been sleeping on the floor for 2 years, eating rice and beans, emaciated, would say, but it's my religion. I want to be here. That's the difficult part of trying to do something to help these people.
But if Mike Rinder in that situation said, I want to leave.
You would think it would be like in Guyana when Jim Jones had all of his followers drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
There were people who's the God, I can't think of his name now. Senator or Congressman Leo J. Ryan went down there because his constituents were worried about family members who had moved to this jungle in Guyana. And he and some of his staff went down there and said to the followers, listen, got a plane here. Anyone who wants to leave can come with me now. And they murdered him. There were people who slipped little notes to him to say, this is horrible. You got to get me out of here. And that's when he said, all right, anyone who wants to come can come. He was shot dead. And meanwhile, the other folks were told to, drink the Kool-Aid. A lot of people did. A lot of people said, I'd rather not. And a lot of those people who refused to drink the Kool-Aid, they were shot. You get to this point where, that's a serious cult. We're not really facing that with Miscavige and Scientology. I don't think anyone's going to go to those lengths.
You don't think they've killed people?
I don't think so. No, I think.
Do you want to not think so?
Well, it's kind of a tough thing to accept. You hear this all the time that, there are people who said, well, yeah, they tried to run me off the road. Like Jerry Armstrong said that, and I believe that. I've had cars try to run me off the road, not Scientology people, but you see people out there doing crazy things with cars. And, L. Ron Hubbard joked about, what is it? There was something about guns. And I should know this. It's a number that would relate to a gun. Anyway, there's some process that he talked about. R245. That's it. R245. Just use that against someone, and you can silence them forever.
Oh man, it's fascinating to me though that a guy who quite literally wrote everything down. That like you said, the FBI was able to raid this stuff later. He wrote things bombastically for a living before he did this. Is interesting that his succession plan wasn't written down.
Yeah. Well, it's possible it was.
Correct.
But the only one who knew where it was Miscavige.
And he got rid of it.
Yeah.
That is very, very fascinating to me. Because there was a whole thing, too. I'm trying to remember this story. This was a big thing like a year ago, and then I guess she got found. But like Miscavige's wife, Shelley, who I guess is also a Scientologist.
Yeah.
She went missing for a long time. What was the deal there? Like she wasn't at Tom Cruise's wedding, and then no one heard from her for years, and now they found her?
Right. Leah Remini asked questions at Tom Cruise's wedding because Miscavige was there and Shelley wasn't. And she was saying, well, where's Shelley? That got her in trouble. And that was the reason they brought her in to sec check her for a couple of months at the end of her career in Scientology because she dared to ask Miscavige a question. And I'm sure it's just a situation like their marriage was crap. And just like Miscavige would have no problem sending off a husband to the other side of the planet and let the poor wife who still believes in Scientology slave away in the Sea Org. Right. I'm sure it's just the same way. The easiest thing to do is just send her to a different org. Get her out of my sight. And, my feeling is that she probably still believes in L. Ron Hubbard and still believes in the tech and is happy to be slaving away at another org and just content. Well, that didn't work out.
But they did find her, though, recently, right?
Well,
she was located somewhere?
Was supposed to be up in Big Bear. And I did see a headline that she was spotted at another location. I didn't read the article, so I'm not sure where she's supposed to be now.
That's so mysterious.
I am less concerned about that. I'm more amused that it's become something that the entire world knows about. I mean, people
Where's
can
Shelley?
People can make that joke, especially, John Oliver. Routinely ask, "Where's Shelley? Where's Shelley Miscavige?" And I don't know if you saw this bit from last year when Mickey Mouse was about to go into the public domain. They got some guy dressed up like Mickey Mouse, and his new catchphrase, he said, "Where's Shelley?" And so for
awesome.
several
Can we
episodes
find
several episodes of Last Week Tonight, they came out and did
awesome.
that. Where's Shelley Miscavige?
Oh my God. And there was also something similar, I think, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, right? Like they wanted to they thought Nicole was leading him astray from Scientology, and they wanted to break up that marriage.
I hear rumors, but essentially her father is a psychiatrist.
Oh boy!
And so that was always a troubling aspect of their relationship to begin with, and I guess she was starting to have some doubts. She wasn't as hardcore as Tom, but she was still a Scientologist. For whatever reason, and I'm not privy to any of it, Cruise had a prenup with her. I think that, if they split before 10 years, she would get far less. And right as that was coming to that deadline, he said, "We're done."
Smart
in the
businessman.
press, it said he's "You know what you've done, Nicole," but nothing was ever revealed as to what was going on. And frankly, I don't care.
Good for you. Yeah, there's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
We have a whole religious issue here, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's insane that people can put L. Ron Hubbard above their marriages, but
I guess they do.
They do.
Well, this has so far been a great full kind of crash course on Scientology and where it's gotten today. There's so much in the history. There's obviously some things we didn't get to, but what I want to do is let's break real quick, grab a bite to eat, and then come back and talk about what you've hinted at throughout today, which is your involvement over the years, how you came into this and what you're doing about it now down literally in Clearwater. I mean, this is what we talked about on the phone a ton. It blows my mind. So we'll be right back and we'll go through all that.
All right.
All right. We are back, everybody. I was just sitting down with you at lunch, already going through some of these things. And I was like, we got to get in the studio right now and not keep talking about this because it's good stuff. But I want to start at the beginning with you and the first time you even became aware of Scientology. When was it? How did it come up? And, was it something that then really became a part of your life later that you just kind of put to the side for a minute? Or were you right away gung-ho like, whoa, this is problematic?
Yeah, no, I can tell you exactly where it started. It was 1980. I was back in Wisconsin where I lived. And Mike Wallace came to Clearwater for 60 minutes and did a piece called The Clearwater Conspiracy. And that was the first time I heard anything about Clearwater. This was shortly after they snuck into town in 1975. And it was all about the takeover and how upset the people of Clearwater were that Scientology had done this. And it was a fascinating story. At the end of it, Mike Wallace had a handful of Scientologists that Scientology provided him for the show to tell Scientology's side of this thing. And it was so bizarre because Mike would say something, well, here's the negative thing that we've discovered. And What do you think about that? Well, I don't know that that's true. Well, would you, if you saw this report, well, we wouldn't look at that report. No, we just wouldn't. We wouldn't look at it. We
Don't
wouldn't
ask,
read
don't
it.
tell.
Yeah. They just wouldn't. They didn't believe anything could possibly be negative about Scientology. And of course, after that show ended, there was no internet. There were very few books published on it. So it was just kind of something that was stored away in my memory. And then in a few years later, I moved to California. And at one point, probably around 98 or so, I had moved into a home in the Hollywood Hills I was renting. Beautiful views.
And what were you doing at the time? Like, what was your career?
I was working for a market research company for the movie studios, and I was doing a lot of acting and voiceover work, stuff like that as well.
Oh, that explains all the good impressions. You did voiceover work. You got a good voice.
Well, it's kind of going now, but I started out as a radio guy back in Wisconsin, right out of college, and then moved to LA to do stuff in TV and film. So it's always been something I've been interested in. Anyway, I'm living in this place in the hills now, and the woman who lived there before me was a Scientologist, and she didn't give them a forwarding address, which often happens when you decide you're getting out of Scientology. You don't want them to know where you are.
Oh.
So I kept getting all of her junk mail, all the copies of the Celebrity magazine and all these different publications they put out. And I'd be reading the articles. I'd be reading the ads for the e-meter. And it was all just bizarre. But, there was my first writings of L. Ron Hubbard that were sent right to my home. And so that got me interested again. And I started, going around to their properties. And, I read one or two books. My favorite was Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller, I believe. Probably my favorite book because it's a biography of Hubbard that's incredibly readable, and it gives you the history of Scientology too, and a really nice, concise, fun, pleasant read. So I recommend that to anyone if they want to find out more about it. So I read that, and then I said, well, I'm going to go down and visit some of these buildings. So I'd go into Big Blue, their big headquarters on Sunset Boulevard, which is used to be the Cedars of Lebanon hospital that they bought, and they painted it this gaudy blue color.
Oh, no wonder. That does look, I was going to say.
Yeah. So I'd wander in there and goes, what goes on in here? And then they'd show me around. They'd give me a tour, and they would show me the orientation film again.
There's the building right there.
Yeah, that's it. Big Blue.
Mm-hmm. Big Blue.
And, I just feigned ignorance, and I went to the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibition on Hollywood Boulevard. By the way, if you're in Hollywood, stop there. It's a treat. It was like a Disneyland of lies. Really nicely laid out, and it kind of it walks you through L. Ron Hubbard's life, so you find out about his Cub Scout adventures and then the Indian tribe thing, and it moves into his career in motion pictures. They claim he wrote Casablanca.
What?
He didn't.
How do you claim you wrote Casablanca?
Well, that's one of those things that just gets around the org. It's not something that they put in the Life exhibition. All they had there, the only thing that we know that L. Ron Hubbard had produced was one of these weekly serials, these like 16 or 40 episode short adventures that would play Saturday afternoons for the kids before a feature film. Yeah. And this one was, I think, something like Mysteries of Treasure Island. There's somebody out there who knows the name of this, and they're going to say, Bunker, you got to get this right. But I haven't thought about these things in years. Anyway, they have like a fake movie theater marquee and box office to show the name of that film on the marquee. The only time probably it was ever on a marquee.
Yeah.
And then next to that was these life-size animatronic figures from Battlefield Earth. Johnny Goodboy Tyler and Turl, the evil alien that John Travolta eventually played. So they have
Fitting.
these. Yeah, they have these figures just like like if you went to the Hall of Presidents at Disney World. They come to life and they do a little scene from the book. And oh my God, that's exciting.
I'm losing brain cells hearing about this.
Oh, it's wonderful. And then they usher you to a room, and this is what it was like when I was there. They usher you to a room where you sit down in a theater to watch a movie, and this is the story of Dianetics. And to introduce it, the lights come down in there, and a volcano arises in front of the screen. The lights go very dramatic, and the volcano explodes without really exploding, just with the sound and lights. Is like, oh my God! And that introduces the black and white film about Hubbard. And they hired a guy to play Hubbard, but it would be sacrilegious to show his face. So he doesn't say a word, and it's all shot from behind his back.
Oh God, it's like
and it's so
Muhammad.
hysterical. It is brilliant. If you ever saw Miracle on 34th Street,
Yes,
which I'm sure
classic
everyone has,
movie. Yeah.
There's a scene at the end where they bring in all the letters to Santa Claus and pour them out in the courtroom and say, oh, this is Santa Claus. Well, there's a scene like that in this where some of the employees come rushing in. Ron, Dianetics is a hit. Look at this. And they're pouring out all the letters. And you just see Hubbard going, you gotta go. You gotta hope it's still playing there. I hope they haven't changed anything
I will
about
be kicked out of there. If you knew me well, you
Well-
only met me today, I'd be kicked out of there within 5 minutes.
come
I know Alessi's nodding his head like yes.
It's you gotta play along and
I'd be
just
like,
enjoy it.
bullshit.
And then you got to play with the e-meter and all.
Oh, you
this
get to
kind of
play
stuff.
with an
Yeah,
actual
you get to
e-meter.
hold on to the e-meter, and they do a little pinch test.
What's a pinch
The
test?
pinch test. Well, you're holding the meter, and they pinch you, and you watch the needle move, and then they say, "Okay, now remember the pinch," and you remember it, and the needle moves a bit. See, that's the recording of the thought. That incident is recorded in your brain. And these negative incidences are what cause all your problems. Your reactive mind is always recording even when you're unconscious or asleep. And there are things that happen to you that you can't make sense of. But Dianetics can help you recover all of these bad instances. And that's essentially what you're doing through Dianetics and through the early courses of Scientology. You're locating these troubling moments in your life, and you're walking through that situation again and again and again. So if you think about the pinch a few more times, it stops moving. The needle doesn't move.
Yeah.
So they go, see, you erased that bad incident from your life.
Do they have like a kiosk at the end of this thing where they're trying to recruit people too? Or is it
Well-
literally just a museum?
I mean, it's all about recruitment. You're invited to, of course, come in and sign up. But it's primarily to say, oh my God, L. Ron Hubbard, he was a remarkable man, and you've got to understand this is the friend of mankind. He's the guy who has all the answers. So come on over and take a course. Let's see what. So when you're going through with Dianetics, and you're holding on to the e-meter, and you're talking about things that have troubled you in your life. And you say, well, I remember when I was a kid, my dad hit me, and it was not nice. And they say, okay, well, tell me about that again. And you tell it again, and they say, all right, no. Go back and remember, did you hear any sounds in the background? Was there a car going? And my father was smoking a cigar. So that explains why anytime you smell a cigar, you feel a little bit panicked because you're unconsciously remembering that your dad savagely beat you. And all you have to do is find out what that first incident is, erase it from your mind, and then
It's gone.
eventually your reactive mind will be clear of all those incidences. And that when you reach that state of clear, now you're ready to move on to the OT levels.
The concept, I just want to say this, the concept they have of rewiring certain impeti, if that's a word, plural, that goes into your brain. Yeah, that's I'll give them that's a psychological concept, but they make everything sound like it may not be like tomorrow, but it's gonna go away. You're gonna be good. That's not real. You can't unless you know.
Well, what do you mean it can't be real?
It's not.
They're doing it. They're saving mankind.
You should have shown them. You should have gone in there and like shown them your voiceover reel and offered to do a live voiceover reel, and just blown the lid off the place. You should have done that. Like, everybody here, this is all bullshit. You are being lied to. It is not real. Get them out.
Yeah, be like those TikTok people on the streets.
Yes.
Run for your life. Don't take the course. At any rate, I'm digressing, as I often do.
No, this is great. This is great. You were talking about going through the museum for the first time, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, and then the last step of it, you come into a room where there's a wall. You know how the music got really pretentious in the orientation video? You know,
yes.
Big overblown thing, yeah. So they crank up the music, and this, majestic thing happens where the walls part, and behind the walls that are moving out, it reveals all of these plaques that they've received from cities and countries around the world, all proclaiming L. Ron Hubbard as being this wonderful, brilliant man who's saving mankind. And I've seen how they do this. I mean, they will. They did this in Clearwater when I was living there in 2000. The mayor read off a proclamation saying that this particular school, Clearwater Academy, was one of the finest schools in the country, according to the Concerned Businessmen of America. And the Concerned Businessmen they actually wrote a declaration for the mayor to read. And then they said, we'd like to have 3 copies of this, one for the school, one for our records, and then one for us to display back at the Concerned Businessmen headquarters. So they get this done, and then the next week I went in to say, okay, what you just did is do Scientology's bidding, because the Concerned Businessmen of America is a Scientology front group. And when they say, we've looked at all the schools in the country, and this is one of the finest around, it's Scientology saying, give a proclamation to this Scientology school. And I explained to the mayor, now they have you on display. So when parents come to the school, they can say, look, the city loves us. The mayor thinks we're amazing. You should bring their kids here. So that's what they do from lowest level all the way up to President Clinton had sent something to them. And they brag about all these things.
Damn it, Bill.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the closing. They do this type of thing in the orientation video, where they're showing plaudits from around the world, and I think the last one is President Clinton.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just another tiny little part of the scam. You know, how they can make themselves appear legitimate because they know what the public feels about them. They know how disreputable the organization's character is.
Now, when you say they,
the organization's Slappy Miscavige, essentially. You know,
right, because I'm thinking
most Scientologists. Most Scientologists think, well, we hear that Scientology is great, so that's all we hear. So Scientology is great, and they love us.
Because it seems like even like Mike Rinder was effectively like number 2. He was like the underboss, basically. And it seems like until he finally had his clarity, non-Scientology related, like, let's get the fuck out of here, you know, he was into it.
Sure.
Right? So
Sure.
I'm trying to psychologically, it's hard because I've never been a part of that, but I'm trying to psychologically put myself in a person like that shoes and wonder if I actually would recognize how many people think we're a joke versus if I'm Miscavige and I'm just Miscavige and I'm just crazy and obsessed on power. I may know it and not care. You know what I mean? Like this, you think the senior level people, they all know it?
Miscavige knows.
Yes, yes, I would agree with that.
There was a really tragic death at the Fort Harrison Hotel back in 1995. Lisa McPherson was a woman who was a devout Scientologist for many, many years. She had just attested to the state of clear. And like a month or two later, she was having a mental breakdown. And she got involved in a little fender bender accident right outside the Fort Harrison Hotel. And when the paramedics arrived on the scene, she had taken off all of her clothes and was walking down the street naked. And this female paramedic comes up and says, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "I need somebody to pay attention to me. I need help." And they took her a couple blocks away to the Morton Plant Hospital. And she was checked in there. And within an hour, 10 Scientologists showed up at the hospital and convinced her to check herself out against the doctor's wishes. And these 10 people took Lisa back to the Fort Harrison Hotel, and she was locked up in a cabana there for 17 days, the last 17 days of her life. And her mental condition worsened every single day.
Yeah.
By her last day, she had lost 40 pounds. And she was so weak, they panicked. And rather than calling in a doctor or calling an ambulance, they put her in a van and they drove her to a hospital, but not Morton Plant 2 blocks away, not another 5 different hospitals that were closer. They drove all the way over to a hospital where there was a Scientologist doctor on call.
God.
And by the time they got there, she was dead. And this doctor, Dr. Minkoff, who had been like prescribing medication without seeing her, he was freaked out. "Why'd you bring her here?" You know? And of course, Scientology did this major cover-up where they, when the police, found out about this, the person who was in charge of this at that point was the real second in command, Marty Rathbun. Mike was like the third in command for Office of Special Affairs. But Marty whisked all the people who were watching over her out of the country. And they started doing what they could to clean up the situation. There were people who were watching over Lisa every single day.
Doing what? Like security guard, basically?
Well, L. Ron Hubbard has his own theories because psychiatry, of course, is evil.
Oh, God.
So he has his own method that he developed called the introspection rundown or baby watch. So what L. Ron Hubbard said is if you're having a psychotic break, which they would never use that term, but if you're in this condition, people should not be talking to her. So even if she's like talking to you, asking questions, begging for help, you don't respond. She has to have absolute silence. Anything you might say in a situation like that when she's screwed up, that could cause more implants,
This is sadistic.
more engrams. So, you can't say a word. And there were people who were put on the baby watch who didn't even speak English, so they didn't have to worry about saying a word to her. I met one of those people. Just a couple of months ago, I met one of the guys who said, I had just come to the country like a month earlier, and I didn't know any English at all, and they had me watching over her. But the people who did speak English were writing down logs of her condition every single day. And you could see her condition getting worse and worse and worse.
She's losing 40 pounds in 17. I mean,
yeah.
My God.
But she's also, becoming increasingly demented. She's barking like a dog. She thinks she's L. Ron Hubbard herself. She's smearing her feces on the wall. They're forcing medication down her throat with a turkey baster.
What were they giving her again?
Exactly what medicine she was on, I don't remember. You'd have to search that up. There's a couple other doctors who were involved. There's a female doctor who was prescribing a lot of this medication, and she was not licensed in Florida at all to be doing any medical work.
And what was her condition again from the very beginning of the story when they first took her there? Was she already a little manic?
Yeah, she had been having some psychotic break at that point, and that's why she was saying, I need help. And unfortunately, the Scientologists, including her boss Benetta Slaughter, and some other people like Mary DeMoss, who was featured in a lot of my videos. She came out on the street to handle me quite often, and she was my favorite of the Scientologists because she was always...
To handle you?
Yeah, she was always brilliantly bizarre.
You ever let her take advantage of you?
No.
No?
Okay. I did ask her out. I said... I said, let's have dinner. Let's go to the movie. We're both actors. I thought it'd be wonderful. I'm going to fuck
the Scientology right out of you.
Anyway, so these circle of her friends, her peers, said, you can't be here. They're going to put you in a psych ward. Nothing could be worse than having an evil psych doing horrible things to you, electroshock, and who knows what they're going to do, but they're evil. So, she came back with them to the hotel, and that was, the end of it for her.
That's insane.
Anyway, I forgot exactly why I got
You were bringing this up because we were going through your course to getting into really going up against Scientology. So you got involved after this happened.
Yeah.
What went down there?
Yeah. At that point, in the beginning of 2000, Bob Minton, who was the retired international banker who had spent about $10 million helping people abused and defrauded by Scientology, he decided to open up the Lisa McPherson Trust in Clearwater.
She's been dead for several years now.
She had been dead for 5 years.
Right.
But much of this wasn't publicly known for a few years until there was a trial. So there's a criminal trial brought that a lot of this evidence came out. And then there was a civil trial that Bob Minton was bankrolling for the family. And we started the trust. There were 4 of us to begin with who were working down there, moved down there. I was in charge of the multimedia. So I was videotaping, I was creating videos and putting up our website, things like that. This was the most fascinating time of my life. To be invited there, to be part of this bizarre situation where the Scientologists were going just nutso in front of my camera. After a couple of years of them looking goofy on my camera, they realized, we should stop doing this.
Not a good look, yeah.
Yeah. So after that, it became kind of dull. They didn't want to say anything anymore. But anyway, that's around when I got started. In 1999, back in L.A., I started doing videos. The first one that I shot was when 2 Scientologists came to my home to picket me. I call that the revenge picket.
It's a short picket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, really short because I went out there with my camera and I started interviewing these guys.
Were they on your property?
They were out at the edge of the driveway.
So could you shoot them?
Well, I wasn't going to shoot them. I shot them with the camera.
I was trying to get him to say, well, I could have.
I shot them with the camera, and that was plenty powerful. That morning, they had leafleted my entire neighborhood because I got a call from a neighbor saying, "Are you Mark Bunker?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm supposed to beware you." And she
Like
had
a dog, beware of dog.
Yeah, beware your neighbor. Mark Bunker is not who you think he is.
That needs to be your campaign slogan, beware the bunker.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
It's a little too late. I've got everything printed up already.
Let's do it. Come on.
So I knew, they had warned everybody that I was a dangerous individual, but at the bottom of it, they actually put in fine print that they were the Church of Scientology. And when people see that, they go, "Oh, well."
Right.
So we got a big laugh out of that. And there was a policeman who was living in the house above me. And I told him, "Listen, it's possible. I don't think it's likely, but they're picketing people at their homes now, so they may come and picket me here." And as I'm talking to him, I look out the window, and these two guys had shown up with big signs.
And this was a cop?
This was a cop.
And he wasn't loading the shotgun like,
No,
be my pleasure.
No one's shooting at them, okay? In none of my stories will Scientologists be shot at. Anyway, so I'm talking to these guys, trying to have a pleasant conversation with them, and within 3 minutes, I bring up Xenu, and one of the guys was not on that level, so he started walking away. So it was like bizarre that there were security guards in Clearwater who would be following me with their camera, and I could say 75 million years ago, Earth was known as Tegiak, and they would put their fingers in their ears and run away. What kind of security is that?
Not brainwash security.
I mean, it's amazing. So it was a fascinating time. And after a couple of years of that, well, there you go. This is the very first video I shot.
Which, by the way, everyone, the link to Mark's channel is going to be down in our description. You can go subscribe to it. It's Mark Bunker. It's got all the stuff you're talking about today. You've just been building this for a while. Yeah. It's really good stuff. All right, go ahead and play this, Alessi.
I think I know more than you in bigot. Well, if you would consider Scientology a religion, I suppose I might believe that, but unfortunately it's a cult.
That dude don't even look real.
Ready to be an
All right.
Ads.
Yeah, I got to give you my premium. Do skip. It's over there on the right. Yep. There you go.
You know, deep down inside, you're trying to harm something that is good and helps other people.
Well, deep down inside, I'm trying to help you, is what I feel. Because you probably don't know all of what your church does and all of what your church believes.
I know a lot of what my church does, and it's mostly helping people, So.
Well, where are you on the bridge?
Oh, Mark, I'm not going to listen to you.
Well, where are you online?
Where I'm on the bridge.
Well, just, you're here. I'd always like to talk to Scientologists. I'm trying to get your side of the story.
Have you ever done anything in Scientology yourself?
I went in, I took the personality test.
You've never
and I played with the e-meter.
Played with the e-meter?
Played with the e-meter. Well, the e-meter is kind of a toy. I mean, it's...
So you played with e-meters.
Well,
in other words, you know nothing about what you're attacking.
I
you know nothing about what you're attacking.
I think I know...
You know nothing.
More than you in many respects. For instance, I know about OT3, where Hubbard wrote that 75...
Homeless John Lennon's laugh is really bothering me.
Oh, my God.
And Tegiak was ruled over by the evil overlord Xenu.
He's walking away.
Stuffed us all into volcanoes and blew us up, thus causing all of the problems
that guy's
we
just,
still
he
suffer
is
from
perturbed.
today.
It's like, is this real?
Seems that all of those little invisible dead space cooties that were caused by the exploding volcano.
For people just listening right now who aren't on YouTube or Spotify watching this, go to YouTube or Spotify to watch this. And we'll actually, I'm going to put the link to this down in the description so you can see this video on its own too. You can actually just do that.
Of course, it will cost you about $360,000.
All right, we got the point. Let's
there you
stop
go.
that. But wow.
Yeah, and the other guy who stayed there, Dan Mernon, he stayed for like 20 minutes and we were talking before he finally gave in. And Dan is still in and still believes.
Blonde guy with the goatee?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
homeless John Lennon.
yeah, not the guy who walked away. So Dan, I saw like 10 years later, Anonymous is out in L.A. And Dan Murnan pops up there, and he's saying the exact same things to them that he said to me, a decade earlier. And he still believes that. He's still in.
Do you know anything about his backstory?
His backstory?
Yeah,
No, I don't.
That'd be fascinating.
I don't know how fascinating. I mean,
Well,
it's just...
no, I'm saying like to do an autopsy of how someone gets that brainwashed.
Yeah.
Like where did they come from to be in a position to become that?
That's your basic Scientology position. I mean, once you get sucked in, you're supposed to be heading toward that. That's the goal of L. Ron Hubbard and Miscavige. They want you to believe anything that they say and nothing that the public says. And you have those blinders on, so you won't hear anything else that's said. At any rate, I mean, it's sad.
What year did you say that video was?
That was 99.
Okay. So now you're like heavily involved in everything. Because we're at this point, obviously, you're now even going to city council. But between then, I think a really important point that I was completely uneducated on that you walked me through on the phone about Scientology that can help people understand why they're able to hold such an iron fist over at least part of Clearwater is how they're essentially building their portfolio for the church. So you talked about Miscavige is essentially buying all this real estate all over Clearwater and in other places, but let's focus on Clearwater, and filling it with nothing. He'll own buildings that are essentially abandoned ghost towns that are near the Scientology Center, so that it's almost like they create a Scientology ghost town for their entire part of town, which, by the way, also costs the city of Clearwater untold amounts of money for, if real businesses were able to go in there and actually add to the economy. There
are very popular downtown areas right around us. Dunedin is 10 miles away at the most, down the Fort Harrison Boulevard, right on the water the same way Clearwater is. They have a happening Main Street there. It's a much smaller city than Clearwater, but people, dine there, shop there. It's an incredibly popular spot, especially for people in Clearwater who have nowhere else to go. And there's another place, Safety Harbor, which is right nearby as well. Very wonderful place to go and have a meal, and the place is always popular. We're dead. And we have been ever since Scientology snuck into town in 1975. They have turned it into a nuclear radioactive dead zone. And they like it that way. They have a campus there that Miscavige wants to keep people away from. Miscavige doesn't want prying eyes seeing anything that we shouldn't see.
Well, he's so small, I can barely see him. So,
well, there you go. You can take some binoculars with you and look down at them. But the thing is, there are people that I'll encounter. Like when I was running my first campaign for city council 4 years ago, knocking on doors, introducing myself, everyone had stories. Everyone had questions. Everyone was concerned. Pretty much every candidate says when you knock on the door, the first thing people ask is, "What are you going to do about Scientology?"
Oh, wow!
And I have the ability to say, "Well, I've been helping people abused and defrauded for 25 years now."
Wow!
And you may have seen me on Leah Remini's show, Scientology in the Aftermath. And so immediately people say, give me that clipboard. I want to sign a petition for you. And you got my vote. So that helped me in the first campaign, and that got me elected because it was pretty much this crazy guy talking about Scientology with no political career before this.
Outsider, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also said, like, people, you were telling me on the phone, people on the council historically are very afraid to talk about it publicly. Obviously, they may talk about it privately and not like it, but there's a fear there.
Well, historically, that wasn't always the case. I mentioned Gabe Casares, who was the mayor when they snuck into town. Gabe continued to actively speak out against Scientology for the rest of his life. And I got to know him when I moved there in 2000, and we became friends. So I spent a lot of time with him. And also Lieutenant Ray Emmons, who was the police lieutenant who was in charge of investigating Scientology for 20 years. I got to know him pretty well. Now, at that point, there was such an uproar. No one was afraid of taking on Scientology. Everyone on the council understood that this was a problem. And in 1982, after the FBI raids and all sorts of other stuff was uncovered about what they did in Clearwater, the city council held hearings in our council chambers for a week where they brought in an attorney who was representing a lot of people who had been former Scientologists or ripped off by them. And he brought in people like Paulette Cooper, the woman who wrote the book about Scientology and was attacked. L. Ron Hubbard's son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., he came to testify.
When did he leave his father's care?
They were working together in the 50s, and I think somewhere in the 70s they had a falling out. Hubbard Sr., who was in hiding at that point, Jr. tried to have him declared dead because there was no sign of him. So he went to court and tried to get this done, and then they faked. Well, they didn't fake, but they couldn't bring Hubbard forward because they would clap cuffs on him and take him away. So they would do things like I think he wrote a signature on something and they put something there. I don't know. They tried to pretend that, hey, look, it's a signature.
He's alive.
He's alive. Yeah. So by then there was a family rift, and Junior had written a book with another co-author, ripping into Dad.
He knew it was all a scam.
Yeah. But then they attacked him viciously, and Junior said, "Okay, I'm gonna settle, and I'll take back everything. Just leave me alone, give me the money, and I'll shut my mouth." So for a week there were these hearings, and Scientology had the option to come and give their own testimony, and they refused. At the end of the week, their attorney, who's not a Scientologist, he was just the top criminal attorney in the city. They always paid, the guy who is the big hotshot, they'll hire them. And he came and talked for like 10 minutes saying, this is nothing. This is nonsense. We are not even going to respond to any of this. I got videotapes of that entire week's worth of testimony, and I put that online back in 99, and you can still see it on that channel. So if you're interested at all in seeing what it was like in 1982 when no one was afraid on the council to take them on,
versus now,
that's what it was like. And unfortunately, over the decades, that faded away.
Is that because more and more Scientologists settled in Clearwater, and because of the financial influence Miscavige has?
No.
Why is it?
What it is this was a problem that Clearwater itself couldn't solve. So they went to the state officials. They went to federal officials. They said, we need help. And people on the higher levels, they said, Are they going to come after me?
Oh.
Are they going to attack me? It's a religion. So no one helped. Clearwater at one point passed a law saying that if you're not a religion, but if you're I can't even think of a simple phrase like nonprofit.
Okay.
If you're a nonprofit operating
Like
here in the city,
501c3 type.
yeah,
thing?
you need to open up your books for us to check out. And clearly they wanted to be able to see Scientology's books. Scientology took them to court, and they won. And
How'd they win?
They said, listen, we have religious standing here. You can't just force us to open our books to you. And the court made the city pay them $1 million. After that, the city said, we can't afford this. And no one's helping. Let's just shut up about it. And
that's what did it.
Yeah. So by the time we came to town with the LMT in 2000, the city was upset with us for bringing trouble to the city. They had Scientology off the front page of the paper. And us coming there brought Scientology back to the paper. And people in City Hall thought, well, we're the problem. If we weren't causing all this trouble, then Scientology, who are the ones who are going nuts in the streets of, protesting us, this would all quiet down and no one would even know Scientology was here, which was nonsense.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because, from 75 on, nobody wanted to go downtown because of Scientology. And when I came to town, one thing that Scientology did was protest the police department. They were marching around the police department at one point.
Why?
Because Sid Klein, the police chief, was investigating Scientology, So they were walking around with signs saying, Sid Klein, what's your crime? Sid Klein, what's your crime? So I came to town and I knew what the police had been going through. And one of the first things we did was go to Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast. And the Sid Klein and his police chiefs were all around him. And I thought, well, I'm going to go say hi. And I went over to him and I put out my hand and said, it's a pleasure meeting you. I want you to know I'm a big fan of the Clearwater Police. And he wouldn't shake my hand. He just glared at me and said, if you get my way, I'll arrest you. And I went, oh, this is not what I expected when I moved here to Clearwater. And
did he think you were a Scientologist?
No, he thought I was a pest. I was causing problems that he was going to. Yeah. But that was the general feeling. Bob and Stacy Brooks are the president of the LMT. Went and sat with the then city manager, a fellow who used to be a city manager in Miami. Can I think of his name right now? No, I can't.
It's all right. You're remembering a lot of good stuff today.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
So this guy says to Bob and Stacy, we got Scientology off the front page of the paper, and you're putting them back on there. And he threatened them that he would shut us down. And I think that was a rude awakening for Bob and Stacy that this was happening. But meanwhile, the public were behind us, and while we were there, we did help a few people get out of Scientology. We educated a lot of other people.
Wait, how'd you do that? How'd you get them out?
There were people, like my friend Tori Chrisman. She was actually, it was the internet that got her out. Tori was a member for 30 years. And I met her in L.A., where she and her husband lived, at some of the protests. So she would come out to handle the critics when we were out there. And I have videotape of her coming up to me the very first time. Yeah, that story there. This is when she's out already. But when I first met her on L. Ron Hubbard Way,
I'm just asking you, why can't you, communication is the universal solvent, but it's not solving here.
You'd say that you did something in Scientology, right?
I was up to OT7.
Right. So
For 7 years.
Apparently it doesn't matter, does it?
It didn't work for me. And I don't know why other people didn't work. Apparently not. And it wasn't that I was a failed
Oh, I love the alien blow up right there.
Yeah.
That's
You know
good.
what I said?
so this
good.
guy was a
Some people
current
I believe-
Scientologist. So the roles were reversed. When I met her, she was the one saying, "Well, what are you doing here? We're
We're so nice.
Yeah.
Come on, it's a beautiful religion."
First time she came up to me, she put on a really bad English accent and lied about her name. I said, "I'm Mark Bunker. Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Margaret. What are you doing here?" And
These
we
people
had
are too stupid to be
we had a
true.
pleasant little conversation. And then I would see her at a few other protests, and we always got along well. She and her husband, JR, was the name he was using. I would talk with them, and they were nice people. And I'm nice, so we got along fine. There were a couple other critics that were a little harsher, and they didn't like them, but I'm adorable. You got to admit,
You are a very nice guy. You disarm people very quickly. I'm surprised these people. I understand it's like, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but normal people, I would think, would be able to at least calm down and have a conversation with you eventually.
What reach does he have? And she said, he's the only non-Trump family member that Trump follows on Twitter at the time.
Yeah, you told me keep going.